guys, it's Hannah here from Squire Shelf. I'm going to be reading chapter 10 today of the Lady Vanishes. I'm whispering and I'm in the dark because you've probably guessed. It's quite late at night and I'm going to read the next chapter. I thought I'd take this opportunity because I'm not sleeping well. I've suffered from insomnia for quite a long time actually. It's kind of part of my anxiety, but it's on and off. It doesn't usually last for more than a few days, maybe 3 or 4 at a time, but it has caused me issues quite a bit in the past. But this past week, I think just because of the unprecedented circumstances of COVID-19, it's meant that I've not been sleeping very much at all. I've been trying to catch naps here and there during the day, but they don't really work, and then I kind of try not to because I don't think I'll sleep at night. But yeah, and then having nightmares when I am sleeping, so thanks brain. So yeah, hence I'm in the dark, and I'm trying to be quiet so I don't keep anybody else in the house awake. This unflattering light and angle is usually, as you can tell, I'm in my bed and I'm reading by candlelight. Can you see there's a candle there? Yeah. I don't have bedside lamps at the moment. The ones I had didn't really fit in with the style I'm trying to go for in my bedroom. It's kind of Art Deco style, though my bed doesn't, but my bedside tables are, and I didn't want to keep the ones I had. And actually, so I've just been, when I turn off my big light and the other lamps in my room, I just read by candlelight, which is actually really soothing. Not having artificial light, I'm sure, has helped me in the past get to sleep quicker. And I try and shut my phone off quite a bit, earlier when I come to bed, apart from now obviously filming, to try and help myself sleep as well. But it's just not been working over the last few days, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to read the next chapter, and maybe reading aloud a bit might help me get some sleep, fingers crossed. I hope none of you are suffering with insomnia. It can be quite debilitating, and this past week it's just meant that I've been a lot less productive. I mean, I've been furloughed now for 2 weeks, so productive in the sense of, doing chores around the house and catching up on things and doing my own independent research and reading and my passions. But yeah, this week haven't done much. But I thought I can read another chapter. So this is chapter 10, The Vacant Seat. Just to quickly recap. So Iris has met Miss Froy on the train. They've gone for refreshments. Miss Froy has talked all about her life, about her parents who are waiting for her at home in England, why she's been kind of working abroad, she's been travelling, her connection to the Baroness on the train who got her last minute ticket. And a bit about the background of the employer that she has been working for, the Baroness's brother. And now she has vanished. So we'll get back to what's happening with Iris on the train. Iris was ungratefully glad of Miss Froy's absence. Her doze had confused rather than refreshed her, and she felt she could not endure another long instalment of family history. She wanted peace, and while it was impossible to have quiet amid the roar and rush of the train, she considered herself entitled at least to personal privacy. As regarded the other passengers, she was free from any risk of contact. Not one of them took the slightest notice of her. The Baroness slept in her corner, the others sat motionless and silent. Inside the carriage the atmosphere was warm and airless as a conservatory. It soothed Iris to a tranquil torpidity. She felt numb to thought and feeling, as though she were in a semi-trance, and incapable of raising a finger or framing 2 consecutive words. Patches of green scenery fluttered past the window like a flock of emerald birds. The Baroness's heavy breathing rose and fell with the regularity of a tide. Iris vaguely dreaded Miss Froy's return, which must destroy the narcotic spell. At any moment now she might hear the brisk step in the corridor. Presumably Miss Froy had gone to wash and had been obliged to wait her turn owing to the crowd. Hoping for the best, Iris closed her eyes again. At first she was apprehensive whenever anyone passed by the window, but each false alarm increased her sense of security. Miss Froy ceased to be a menace and shrank to a mere name. The octogenarian parents went back to their rightful place inside some old photograph album. Even Sock, that shaggy, absurd mongrel whom Iris had grown to like, was blurred to an appealing memory. Clankety-clankety-clank. The sound of breathing swelled to the surge of a heavy sea, sucking at the rocks. Muted by the thunder of the train, it boomed in unison with the throb of the engine. Clankety-clankety-clank. Suddenly the Baroness's snores arose to an elephantine trumpet which jerked Iris awake. She started up in her seat, tense with apprehension and with every faculty keyed up. The shock had vibrated some seventh sense which made her expectant of disaster as she glanced swiftly at Miss Froy's place. It was still empty. She was surprised by a pang of disappointment. Not long ago she had been praying for Miss Froy's return to be delayed, but now she felt lonely and eager to welcome her. "I expect I'll soon be cursing her again," she admitted to herself. "But anyway, she is human." She glanced at the blonde beauty, who was beginning to remind her of a wax model in a shop window. Not a flat wave of her honey-gold hair was out of place. Even her eyes had the transparency of blue wax. Chilled by the contrast to the vital little spinster, Iris looked at her watch. The late hour, which told her that she had slept longer than she suspected, also made her feel rather worried about Miss Froy's prolonged absence. She had enough time to take a bath, she thought. I hope nothing's wrong. The idea was so disturbing that she exerted all her common sense to dislodge it. Absurd, she told herself. What could happen to her? It's not night, when she might open the wrong door by mistake and step out of the train in the dark. Besides, she's an experienced traveller, not a helpless fool like myself, and she knows about 100 languages. A smile flickered over her lips as she remembered one of the little spinster's confidences. Languages give me a sense of power. If an international crisis arose in a railway carriage and there were no interpreters, I could step into the breach and perhaps alter the destinies of the world. The recollection suggested an explanation for Miss Froy's untenanted seat. Probably she was indulging her social instincts by talking to congenial strangers. She was not divided by them by any barrier of language. Moreover, she was in holiday mood and wanted to tell everyone that she was going home. I'll give her another half an hour, decided Iris. She must be back by then. As she looked out of the window, the clouded sky of late afternoon filled her with melancholy. The train had been gradually descending from the heights and was now steaming through a lush green valley. Mauve crocuses cropped up amid thick pastures which were darkened by moisture. The scene was definitely autumnal and made her realise that summer was over. The time slipped away too quickly because she dreaded reaching the limit which she had appointed. If Miss Froy did not return, she would have to make a decision, and she did not know what to do. Of course, as she reminded herself, it was not really her business at all, but her uneasiness grew with the passing of each 5 minutes of grace. Presently there was a stir among the other passengers. The little girl began to whine fretfully, while the father appeared to reason with her. Iris guessed that she complained of sleepiness and had been persuaded to take a nap, when she saw the mother's preparations to keep her daughter's trim appearance intact. After the black patent belt and the organdy collar had been removed, she drew out her net and arranged it carefully over the little girl's permanent wave. The blonde beauty showed her first signs of animation as she watched the process, but her interest died when the matron pulled off her child's buckled shoes and replaced them with a pair of shabby bedroom slippers. Finally, she pointed to Miss Froy's vacant place. Iris felt a rush of disproportionate resentment when she saw the little girl sitting in the spinster's seat. She wished she could protest by signs, but was too self-conscious to risk making an exhibition of herself. When she comes back, Miss Froy will soon turn her out, she thought. Upon reflection, however, she was not so sure of direct action. When she remembered the friendly spirit Miss Froy displayed towards everyone, she felt certain that she was already establishing a pleasant understanding with her fellow passengers. The little girl was so heavy with sleep that she closed her eyes directly she curled up in her corner. The parents looked at each other and smiled. They caught the blonde beauty's attention, and she too nodded with polite appreciation. Only Iris remained outside the circle. She knew that she was unjustly prejudiced, since she was the real interloper, yet she hated this calm appropriation of Miss Froy's place. It was as though the other passengers were taking unfair advantage of her absence, since she could not turn out a sleeping child, or even as though they were acting on some secret intelligence. They were behaving as though they knew she was not coming back. In a panic, Iris looked at her watch, to find, to her dismay, that the half-hour had slipped away. The lapse of time was registered outside the window. The overcast sky had grown darker, and the first mists were beginning to collect in the corners of the green, saturated fields. Instead of crocuses, she saw the pallid fungoid growths of toadstools or mushrooms. As the sadness of twilight stole over her, Iris began to hunger for company. She wanted cheerful voices, lights, laughter, but although she thought wistfully of the crowd, she was even more anxious to see a little lined face and hear the high rushing voice. Now that she was gone, she seemed indefinite as a dream. Iris could not reconstruct any clear picture of her or understand why she should leave such a blank. What was she like, she wondered. At that moment she chanced to look up at the rack. To her surprise, Miss Froy's suitcase was no longer there. In spite of logic, her nerves began to flutter at this new development. While she told herself that it was obvious that Miss Froy had moved to another compartment, the circumstances did not fit it. To begin with, the train was so overcrowded that it would be difficult to find an empty, unreserved place. On the other hand, Miss Froy had mentioned some muddle about her seat. It was barely possible that it had proved available after all. No, decided Iris. The Baroness had already paid the difference for her to travel first, and I'm sure she wouldn't leave me without a word of explanation. She talked of bringing me dinner. Besides, I owe her for my tea. I'm simply bound to find her. She looked at the other passengers who might hold the key to the mystery. Too distracted now to care about appearances, she made an effort to communicate with them. Feeling that English was the word which should have lightened her darkness, she started in German. Wo ist die Dame English? They shook their heads and shrugged to show that they did not understand, so she made a second attempt. Où est la Dame English? As no sign of intelligence dawned on their faces, she spoke to them in her own language. Where is the English lady? The effort was hopeless. She could not reach them, and they showed no wish to touch her. As they stared at her, she was chilled by their indifference, as though she were outside the pale of civilised obligations. Feeling suddenly desperate, she pointed to Miss Froy's seat and then arched her brows in exaggerated inquiry. This time she succeeded in arousing an emotion, for the man and his wife exchanged amused glances, while the blonde's lip curled with disdain. Then, as though she scented entertainment, the little girl opened her black eyes and broke into a snigger, which she suppressed instantly as a warning glance from her father. Stung by their ridicule, Iris glared at them as she crossed to the Baroness and shook her arm. "Wake up, please," she entreated. She heard a smothered gasp from the other passengers, as though she had committed some act of sacrilege. But she was too overwrought to remember to apologise, when the Baroness raised her lids and stared at her with outraged majesty. "Where is Miss Froy?" asked Iris. "Miss Froy?" repeated the Baroness. "I do not know anyone who has that name." Iris pointed to the seat that was occupied by the little girl. "She sat there," she said. The Baroness shook her head. "You make a mistake," she declared. "No English lady has sat there ever." Iris's head began to reel. "But she did," she insisted. "I talked to her. We went and had tea together, you must remember." "There is nothing to remember," the Baroness spoke with slow emphasis. "I do not understand what you mean at all. I tell you this. There has been no English lady here in this carriage, never at any time except you. You are the only English lady here." End of chapter 10 of The Lady Vanishes. I hope you guys are sleeping okay. I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that I can get some more sleep tonight, so I'm going to leave you now and go and try and get some sleep. Bye guys, see you soon.